Hello, my name is Brian Lewis, and I'm an instructor at JTNS. We're going to talk about accident causes and controls in this presentation. But before we get started, what I'd like to ask you to do is to pause this video, take a brief moment, and discuss any near misses or accidents you've had. After you've discussed any near misses or accidents, hopefully productively, go ahead and press play and we'll continue with our presentation. So when we talk about accident causes and controls, a lot of times we talk about engineering controls, we talk about administrative controls, we talk about wearing our PPE, we talk about a lot of things that we need to do. But this presentation, what we want to talk about are priorities and decisions. Accidents are unplanned events, but what we can do is use the decisions and make good decisions to reduce our risk for our accidents as much as we can. If safety and health is a priority, then that leads to good decision making to reduce our risk. We do not want to increase our risk. We want to reduce it. We want to get it as close to zero as we possibly can. So if safety and health is a priority, really what's that saying is you're taking responsibility for yourself and you're taking responsibility for your coworkers. It's important that we do that. Taking responsibility for yourself and taking responsibility for your coworkers, and your other coworkers are taking responsibility for themselves and taking responsibility for you. What we're doing is we're increasing our awareness, we're making good decisions, and collectively we're keeping our risk as low as we possibly can. It's important that we do that. Do we value our families? Because if you value your family, that's an important step. Most of us don't have any problem sacrificing for our families. But I'm going to tell you, if you get hurt, you get disabled, or Lord forbid, you die, there's going to be a really bad economic impact on your family. Not to mention the human cost and the trauma they have to go through losing a loved one. Do you respect or value your coworkers' families, realizing that if they lose a member of their family, they're going to endure those same hardships? So we need to respect ourselves, we need to respect our families, we need to take responsibility for ourselves. A lot of times we talk about sacrifice, but sometimes what we really need to say is it's not so much about sacrifice as it is living for the people we love and love us, our families and our friends, our coworkers' families and friends also. Now, I don't think anybody's going to stand up and say, hey, I don't value myself, I don't value my family, I don't value my coworkers or their families. Very few people are bold enough and really mean that they don't value people. But when we make decisions, bad decisions, where we increase our risk, where people can get hurt, that's really what we're saying. Our actions speak louder than our words. And those decisions we need to make to reduce our risk, it's important we take responsibility for those things. Because our actions do, in fact, tell us what our priorities are. If you take shortcuts and you don't follow what you need to follow, you're going to create an issue for yourself or people that you work with. So behind our actions, we make a lot of big and a lot of little decisions every day. And those decisions show our priorities. They really do. If you don't want your risk or your coworker's risk to get it as close to zero, you're really saying you don't value them, you don't value yourself, you don't value the people that are in your family and your circle of friends. Do we put guards back on equipment after we do maintenance? Do we inspect our PPE and make sure it's in good shape? Do we maintain eye contact with the person that's running that backhoe or track hoe? Do they maintain eye contact with us? When we use a chainsaw or some other piece of equipment, do we make sure we've got bar oil in it? Do we make sure the chain is sharp? Do we make sure that the tension on the chain is right? Do we use our chaps? Do we have safety shoes, have face, ear protection, head protection? All those things that matter. And they can't just matter in the fall when it's cool and it's easy to wear chaps. They have to matter in July and August when it's really hot. No one really wants to put on chaps. If you don't make sure the chain is sharp, you're going to use that chainsaw. You're going to take risk with it. You're going to put yourself in a bad shape if you're not careful. Dull chains, just like a dull knife, it's a bad tool. You don't want to do it. Do we use crescent wrenches for hammers? Do we do we use screwdrivers for chisels? We need to use the right tool for the right job. That says a lot about our decision making. When we need to, do we use trench boxes? Or if do we have somebody that's going to slope it back? Do they pay attention that we have the correct slope? Are there things that we do only when we're being watched? If there's things we only do when we're being watched, odds are we're cutting corners somewhere. Cutting corners. And we don't want to cut corners. We want to make good decisions. We want to have high quality. We want to do things in a timely manner. And we want to keep everybody safe. Do we stand in harm's way when track hose are being used, when chains, ropes, and slings are under tension or stress? Do we inspect those things? Do we make sure that they're DOT approved for what we're using them for? Do we make sure that they have a load rating on them? And even if we do the inspections correctly and make sure it's the right stuff, do we stand in the way where if they snap or break, it will get in the way or the path of that chain or rope or sling? There's a lot of energy in those things, right? If we don't do that ourselves, do we tap other people on the shoulder and say, hey, you don't need to stand there? Every crew has new people show up on it sometime, and you have to emphasize to people that don't know. You have to educate them. You're their trainer, part of their on-the-job training. Hey, you don't stand there while this is being done. You stand over here. Don't put yourself at risk. Explain things to them. Do we use lockout? Do we use tag out? Lockout is better. It's durable. We use durable locks. And so that's important. When you perform tag out, you just got a little tag. And so when you do tag out, you actually have to take an extra step and block the start-stop button, turn the breaker off, open up that circuit, and block it so no one can turn it on. Or if it's a machine, you got to maintain control of the keys so nobody can start it. That is tag out. You got to go an extra step with tag out. Lockout, use locks. Those locks are more durable, and that makes a difference. Do we always wear our PPE? Do we inspect our PPE? Do we make sure we have high visibility vests on when we're exposed to traffic so we can be seen? All these things are important. Do we say anything to others when they're not wearing their PPE? So, as an adult, we have to communicate with each other. You do not have to be a jerk. You can simply say you need to put on your PPE. Hey, when we do this job, we put on our PPE. If you're on the other side of it, you can choose to not be a jerk also. You can thank somebody for reminding you. PPE is not always fun, right? Sometimes it gets in the way. Sometimes it makes it difficult to see what we're doing. Make it difficult to hear other people, what they have to say. We have to work around that if we want to protect our eyes, our hearing, our head, our feet, our hands. All that's important. And those little decisions are important also. Machines aren't perfect. Engineers, designers do the best they can, but they're people too, right? Sometimes you got new equipment in, and someone's done their best to make sure it is safe and create new safety features. And when you receive the equipment, you need to do an inspection. Familiarize yourself with the new safety features. Make sure you know how to use it. None of us are perfect. We have to do things in a certain order to make sure that we are aware of how we need to do or use a piece of equipment, and if procedures need to change because this equipment is significantly different than what we used to use. All these things are important. Accidents are unplanned events. They are not planned. But we can drive the risk as close to zero as we can so that someone's chances of being hurt or the risk of someone being hurt is as close to zero as we can. The decisions we make inform, they tell everyone around us what our priorities are. And if we maintain engineering controls, if we maintain administrative controls where, say for example, someone's using a backhoe, if the operator keeps us in this field of vision, and if you're working around the backhoe, if you keep yourself facing the backhoe so that you can see the operator and how the backhoe is being used, we can administratively keep each other out of harm's way. Like I've already mentioned, inspecting, putting our PPE on, taking it off, using it when we're supposed to use it, all that's important. Everything we do, every decision we make, it either decreases or it increases the risk of an accident or a near miss. We want to get that as close to zero. Accidents are unplanned events. We have very little control over an unplanned event. But what we can do is we can influence the factors that can cause accidents to occur. And so that's what we have to do. We have to make good decisions. We have to inspect our equipment, make sure it's in good working order. We have to inspect our PPE. We have to use it correctly. We have to use the correct procedures. All that's important. And that informs, those decisions inform if safety and health is a priority. So inspect, maintain, make sure your equipment's running right. Make sure you're familiar with all the safety features. Make sure all the guards are in place. Make sure you do preventative maintenance. Make sure you inspect your PPE, and if it's worn out or if it's defective, make sure you get better, more PPE that's adequate for what you're going and doing. All this is important. Make sure that the trench box is used correctly. Make sure that you're inside the trench box, the ladder's inside the trench box. Make sure you backfill so if there's a partial collapse, it doesn't rock the trench box and land on somebody's foot. When you're sloping, make sure you're sloping correctly. Make sure you're sloping correctly. Inspect all those slings, chains, ropes. Make sure that they are adequate. Make sure they have a load rating. Make sure that they are labeled. When they're under stress, stand away from those things. Stand away from heavy equipment. Always wear your PPE correctly. Always inspect it. Make sure it's in good shape. PPE is not perfect, but if you inspect it, make sure it's in good shape. Make sure you're wearing it correctly, and when you're supposed to, it gives you an opportunity. It reduces the risk of something bad happening. That's what we want to do. Beware of what is around you and communicate problems and potential problems to people. If you know something's not right, speak up. It's not going to get fixed unless you yourself fix it or you tell somebody else that there's something wrong. Maybe they know how to fix it and you don't. Maybe somebody knows how to do proper maintenance or correct or has the ability to buy something to fix it, a part, whatever it may be. You've got to be an adult and communicate these things to people. We can't fall down on that. That's a decision we've got to do. We've got to do our inspections and make sure that stuff is working. As I've said before, controls fit into categories, 3 categories, major categories anyway. Engineering controls, these are great because if they are designed properly and we maintain the piece of equipment, do not defeat the engineering controls. What they do is they take our thinking and decision making out of the equation. That's a great thing. But we have to inspect our equipment, make sure it's in good working order, and make sure the safety features work as they're intended to. Administrative controls and PPE, those things are dependent on us making good decisions. whether they're little decisions or big decisions, depends on the situation, but we have to make good decisions about inspecting materials, inspecting equipment, making sure it all fits, making sure it's all right. Accident causes and controls. It takes more than just engineering, administrative, and PPE. Just having those things and being aware of them is not enough, right? It takes people that have safety and health as a priority to use them correctly, to make good decisions. That's important. It's important we make good decisions. Our decisions, our actions actually speak louder than our words. So you have to be responsible for yourself, and you have to be responsible for those around you. It's important that we do that and that we set that priority. It's important that we set that priority. I appreciate y'all paying attention. If you have any questions, please contact the JTNS instructor, and we'll do our best to answer every question. We may not know the answer right off the top of our head, but if we don't, we'll look it up and do our best to figure it out. Thank you all. Have a good day.